A white officer stops a black judge at the courthouse, but what happens next is unbelievable. Welcome, everyone, to today's gripping tale, a story woven with threads of suspense, jaw-dropping twists, and thought-provoking drama. You're about to witness a confrontation that begins innocently enough. A white officer stopping a black judge in the corridors of a bustling courthouse. Yet what starts as a typical moment in the American justice system quickly spirals into an astonishing chain of events you won't see coming. This story is filled with shocking revelations, karmic retribution, and the relentless pursuit of truth. By the end, you'll be on the edge of your seat, mouth agape at the turns fate can take. Get ready to experience a riveting journey into the heart of justice, prejudice, and redemption. Before we dive in, if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss an update. If you're excited about this story, let us know. If you enjoyed the video, press 1. If not, press O. Your feedback really inspires me to gather more uplifting and meaningful stories. The morning sun glinted off the tall windows of the Fulton County Courthouse in Atlanta, Georgia, as Court Officer Franklin Young, an officer contracted by local authorities, adjusted his crisp uniform. He checked his reflection in the polished glass doors, ensuring that every button was aligned and his silver badge gleamed. Officer Young prided himself on presenting a spotless image, believing that impeccable appearance was just as important as unwavering discipline. As the hustle of attorneys, defendants, reporters, and the occasional tourist streamed around him, his eyes caught sight of a figure stepping out of a sleek, black BMW in the visitors' parking lot. The driver was a tall, distinguished black man clad in a sharp, tailored suit. He moved with an air of quiet confidence. Officer Young noticed an official-looking leather folder tucked beneath the man's arm, an item commonly seen among lawyers or dignitaries. A quick side glance from the man hinted at a polite smile that never fully materialized. Though Officer Young couldn't pinpoint why, he felt an immediate, inexplicable tension brewing in his chest. "Good morning, sir," Officer Young said, injecting a professional courtesy into his voice. The man nodded. "Good morning, officer." He spoke as if nothing were amiss and continued up the courthouse steps. "Sir, if you'll just step over here for a moment," Officer Young called, raising his hand in a halting gesture. The man paused, eyebrows arching slightly at the command. He appeared puzzled, not hostile. The swirl of attorneys, visitors, and courthouse staff parted around them. Officer Young's posture stiffened. A subdued hush fell within earshot, as if the crowd sensed something charged in the air. "I'm going to have to check your ID," Officer Young added, maintaining his composure. The man presented a state-issued credential from inside his wallet. Still, the name was partially obstructed by the protective casing, so the officer narrowed his eyes and leaned in to inspect it. 1 or 2 seconds of silence stretched uncomfortably long. "That doesn't look like a regular ID," Officer Young said. In his mind, it appeared to be some form of judicial identification. "It's my official court badge," the man replied. His voice carried a calm, measured tone. A flicker of irritation crossed the officer's features. In his years on the job, he'd certainly encountered judges, though rarely outside their chambers. Something about this encounter felt unusual, maybe even confrontational. For reasons he couldn't fully explain, Officer Young's gut tightened. "And you are?" At that moment, the man took a measured breath and removed the credential from its holder, revealing the embossed seal of the state of Georgia and the words Superior Court Judge. He then spoke his name, Judge Clarence Hodge. It was a name well known in legal circles, though not necessarily a household one. Judge Hodge, in addition to presiding over numerous high-profile cases, had garnered a reputation for his unyielding commitment to justice. Yet Officer Young had never put a face to the name. In fact, he'd vaguely heard courthouse chatter about a strict but fair judge rumored to have faced adversity early in his career. He had not, however, anticipated their first meeting would be in this manner, with tension crackling between them on the courthouse steps. A flurry of conflicting emotions rose in Officer Young's chest. A shameful part of him recoiled, suspecting that, despite the ID, something might still be amiss. He glanced over to see if any of his colleagues were watching. It felt as though every set of eyes in the vicinity was trained on them. Each second felt like a drop of molten tension. Judge Hodge exhaled slowly. He adjusted the official leather folder beneath his arm, a folder that bore the gold-trimmed seal of the Fulton County Judicial Administration. "Officer, if you're finished, I have court business to attend to." Suddenly, the tension magnified. Officer Young's hand twitched near his holster, not drawing his weapon but hovering an inch too close. The judge's eyes flicked to that subtle motion, and the quiet around them sharpened into the hush before a potential storm. Then something unexpected happened. A text alert dinged from Officer Young's phone. It was a message from his partner, Officer Kim Delgado, urging him to hurry inside because a rumored threat had been called in earlier. Alarms had been swirling about a potential security breach, a false alarm or not. It had put everyone on edge. The officer's brow furrowed, trying to juggle the swirl of tension outside with the looming worry inside. None of them knew that this tense moment on the courthouse steps was only the beginning of a labyrinthine ordeal involving powerful conspiracies, hidden truths, and personal vendettas, an ordeal that would upend both their lives before the day was done. Inside the foyer of the courthouse, the smell of polished marble and fresh paper drifted through the corridors, mingling with the tension that followed Officer Young and Judge Hodge. People who had witnessed their standoff earlier whispered in hushed tones, speculation already spinning. Judge Hodge, determined to refocus on his official duties, proceeded to his chambers. Anxiety still rippled through him, triggered by the unsettling exchange. He had faced overt and subtle challenges throughout his career, but being stopped in such a manner on courthouse grounds sparked a lingering unease. Sitting at his mahogany desk, he opened his schedule for the day. 2 significant cases were listed, both involving the sentencing of high-level offenders. One was a case involving alleged embezzlement at a prominent local bank, Chase Manhattan Bank's Atlanta branch. The other concerned racketeering charges against several local politicians. Judge Hodge's reputation for impartiality and fair punishment had thrust him into these complicated, high-stakes cases. He felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. Though a stoic man, he couldn't help but sense that things were moving behind the scenes, out of his line of sight. Meanwhile, Officer Young, after receiving the text from Officer Delgado, rushed to a side corridor that led to a security booth. There, Delgado was poring over scanned images from the newly installed Samsung security cameras. Installed as a modernization measure, the cameras were rumored to be the most advanced in the state. The lenses were designed to capture minute facial details, a necessity in this era of heightened courthouse threats. I'm telling you, the phone call about a possible threat had no specifics, no description of a suspect or what they might be carrying, Delgado said. But the call sounded credible. We can't ignore it. Officer Young's jaw tightened. We're scanning every face that comes through these doors. Yep, and we found this. Delgado tilted the monitor to show him. On the screen was an image of a middle-aged man wearing a grey hoodie and a subtle smirk. But it was the eyes that commanded attention. They looked predatory, almost manic. A quick run through facial recognition databases indicated the man's name was Isaiah Caldwell, someone with a criminal history involving violent assaults. Moreover, Caldwell's name popped up in association with potential extremist activity in the region. Young felt his stomach drop. He's in the building right now? Possibly. The cameras last caught him near courtroom 4B on the second floor. The context of that location wasn't lost on Officer Young. Courtroom 4B was where Judge Hodge presided whenever overflow cases demanded an auxiliary courtroom. Suddenly, the tension between him and the judge felt petty compared to the possibility of real danger lurking in the halls. If Caldwell was indeed on the premises, his presence boded ill, especially for a judge known to hand down strict sentences. Before Officer Young could fully process the implications, Delgado received a call on the radio. A tense voice filled the airwaves. "We have a security breach on the second floor. Suspect brandishing a firearm. Possible hostage situation in the hallway outside courtroom 4B. Repeat, suspect with a firearm." Instinct and training kicked in. Young signaled Delgado, and they both bolted down the corridor, radioing for backup. In the swirl of adrenaline, Officer Young couldn't shake the feeling that everything was converging on Judge Hodge, the man he'd just confronted minutes ago, for seemingly no reason other than a nagging suspicion. They raced up the marble staircase. Echoes of commotion traveled down the hallway. A frightened bailiff from another courtroom pressed herself against a wall, eyes wide in terror. She pointed frantically around the corner. Delgado looked back at Young and nodded. Carefully, they inched toward the scene. A frantic voice pierced the tense air. "Stay back or I'll shoot!" Peering around the corner, the officers caught sight of Isaiah Caldwell. His stance was wild, arms rigid as he brandished a Glock at a trembling figure in a judge's robe. It was Judge Hodge, pinned precariously near a set of double doors leading to the rarely used courtroom 4B. A single misstep, a single twitch, and the standoff could morph into a tragedy. Every muscle in Officer Young's body went taut. He pressed himself against the wall, trying to quell the inner tremor of guilt. If he hadn't stalled Judge Hodge outside, perhaps the man would have been safely inside his own main courtroom by now, nowhere near Caldwell. The seriousness of the threat overshadowed any personal conflicts. Hodge was a life in danger, and Young needed to act swiftly. But fate had already begun weaving a larger tapestry. The tension of the day was only growing. Within minutes, more officers were converging on the second floor, forming a perimeter. Whispers circulated. Caldwell was said to have connections to a dangerous extremist group, and no one knew precisely what his demands might be. But they suspected it had something to do with one or more of the big cases on Judge Hodge's docket. While the officers prepared to negotiate, Judge Hodge stood unnervingly calm, even though Caldwell's gun hovered just inches from his face. The situation was on the brink, teetering between meltdown and miracle. No one could have predicted how events were about to spiral beyond comprehension. Sweat trickled down Caldwell's forehead as he kept the Glock trained on Judge Hodge. The hallway outside courtroom 4B had emptied except for the potential hostage, the armed suspect, and a smattering of security personnel pinned behind corners. Whispers of sniper on the roof and crisis negotiation team en route hissed through the comms, fueling the heightened sense of danger. Officer Young, breathing heavily, found himself only a few yards from Caldwell. The judge's eyes briefly flicked over, revealing a silent question: "What do we do?" Young had only seconds to decide. Negotiators were on their way, but Caldwell's demeanor hinted at unpredictability. The beads of sweat, the clenched jaw, the agitated glances he might pull the trigger at the slightest provocation. "Mr. Caldwell," Young called out, trying to inject calm authority into his voice. "Nobody here wants anyone hurt. Let's talk about this." Caldwell's lips curled into a sneer. He jabbed the gun closer to the judge's temple. "Don't come any closer, officer. You don't get to talk to me like you know me." Behind Young, Delgado readied a taser, but a direct shot would be risky if Caldwell flinched or turned the gun on Hodge. Seconds stretched. The tension was suffocating. Caldwell's free hand rummaged in the pocket of his hoodie, pulling out a folded piece of paper. "I've got a message for the entire system," he announced, voice cracking. "For the judges, the lawyers, the cops. All of you are part of the same machine." He waved the piece of paper wildly before pressing it to Judge Hodge's chest. "You're going to read this statement to the cameras. Otherwise, I'll make headlines of my own." From the corner of his eye, Judge Hodge noticed a cell phone in Caldwell's waistband. It was set to camera mode, presumably ready to record or stream. The judge swallowed hard, recognizing that Caldwell wanted to turn this horrific scene into a public spectacle. Time inched forward. Negotiators would arrive soon, but Caldwell's agitation was dangerously high. Officer Young's heart hammered. He considered the possibility of lunging, but Caldwell's stance suggested an instantaneous response, a bullet for the judge. Every second that slipped by frayed the threads of caution. Suddenly, from behind Caldwell, a flash of movement stirred. A bailiff who had been crouching beneath a row of benches rose quietly, armed with pepper spray. She crept forward with measured steps. The bailiff was Jackie Olivares, known for her quick reflexes and fearless approach in tense courtroom scenarios. Officer Young saw her out of the corner of his eye, but dared not shout, lest he tip Caldwell off. Judge Hodge spotted her too, maintaining an outward calm so as not to alert Caldwell. Every muscle in his body tensed, waiting for the right moment. Caldwell, distracted by the rush of adrenaline and his own monologue, seemed momentarily oblivious. That's when it happened in a split second. The bailiff lunged, firing a burst of pepper spray at Caldwell's eyes. The suspect shrieked in fury, reeling back. The Glock wavered away from Judge Hodge. Immediately Hodge ducked, and Officer Young propelled himself forward, tackling Caldwell's arm. Delgado dashed in tandem, pinning Caldwell's other shoulder. Their combined momentum slammed him to the tiled floor with a thunderous crack. The gun clattered away, spinning across the floor like a runaway top. Judge Hodge staggered back, chest heaving as relief and shock collided. Caldwell thrashed beneath the officers, curses and muffled threats pouring from his lips. With practiced precision, Delgado cuffed him while Young secured the weapon. Hodge immediately turned, searching for the bailiff who stood there, blinking away tears from the pepper spray's lingering residue in the air. Sirens wailed from outside, and a throng of SWAT officers and additional security poured into the corridor. Shouts of "clear" and "weapons secured" erupted as the situation came to a swift close. In those deafening moments, adrenaline still surged, but the immediate threat had been neutralized. Officer Young helped Judge Hodge to his feet. Their eyes locked. Young's face was flushed with a mixture of relief and residual tension. Hodge took a long, slow breath. "Thank you," the judge said, almost inaudible above the chaotic bustle. In that moment, it seemed the tension from earlier had dissipated, replaced by the humbling realization that life was too fragile for petty confrontations. As Caldwell was dragged away by a squad of heavily armed officers, the onlookers began to disperse. The hallway eventually returned to its usual echoing stillness, though the memory of this violent standoff would linger in every corner. But the day's events were far from over. Beneath the surface, deeper machinations churned machinations that would soon catapult Officer Young and Judge Hodge into an unlikely alliance. And unbeknownst to them, Caldwell was merely a harbinger of a far larger conspiracy taking shape around the courthouse. In the aftermath, the courthouse resumed its delicate balance between order and chaos. Legal proceedings continued as scheduled, though the drama of the morning reverberated through every corridor. Everyone, from the judge's clerks to the visitors in the security line, whispered about Caldwell's brazen hostage attempt and the near-fatal confrontation with Judge Hodge. Judge Hodge, meanwhile, found himself being examined by paramedics in a private conference room. The paramedics asked if he felt dizzy or nauseous, but he insisted he was fine, shaken, perhaps, but otherwise unhurt. A sense of calm seemed to cloak him, as though an unspoken resolve had settled in the depths of his mind. Officer Young lingered at the threshold, watching. In a surprising move, Hodge beckoned him inside with a simple, "Officer, would you please come in?" Unsure of what to expect, Young stepped inside and quietly closed the door. The paramedics soon left to file their reports, leaving the two men alone amid the hush of the conference room. Sunlight filtered in through tall windows, highlighting Hodge's stoic features. For a moment, neither spoke, their eyes locked in an unspoken understanding. Finally, Judge Hodge leaned against the edge of a table and exhaled. "I need to thank you," he said, voice steady. "Your actions and those of your fellow officers saved my life." Young nodded, his usually rigid demeanor softened. "I'm just doing my job, Your Honor." A flicker of an ironic smile played at Hodge's lips. "You're more than just doing your job, Officer Young. People might see it that way on the surface, but I see the man behind the badge. You confronted your own doubts and acted with courage." Though uncertain how to respond, Young felt a spark of respect for the judge. The tension from earlier, fueled by unconscious prejudice and fear, now felt trivial. "I apologize, Judge. I misjudged you outside." Hodge's gaze flicked down. "I appreciate your apology, but let's not dwell on it. We've got bigger issues to worry about. The fact that Caldwell managed to smuggle a gun inside means there's a severe lapse in security. That's on top of the rumored threats swirling around the courthouse. Someone with his background doesn't typically do these things alone." At that moment, Hodge's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, a text from an unknown number. "Keep sentencing them harshly. You'll end up like those you put away," it read. A chill ghosted over him. The text ended with a single cryptic symbol, a black star superimposed on a white circle. It was reminiscent of certain extremist group insignias, but not one Hodge immediately recognized. He showed the message to Young, who frowned. Could be from a far-right or far-left extremist. "We deal with all sorts, but that symbol, I'm not certain." The judge stepped away, mind buzzing with possibilities. He had drawn attention for his rulings against corruption, brutality, and violence in multiple high-profile cases. Threats were, unfortunately, not uncommon. But the timing of this text, mere minutes after the hostage crisis, felt orchestrated like part of a grander strategy. "Officer Young," Hodge said, turning back, "I think Caldwell might be just the tip of the iceberg. There's a chance he's working with a network, and if that's the case, your entire security detail could be in jeopardy." Young felt the weight of the moment. "You're suggesting there might be infiltration?" "It wouldn't be the first time a courthouse was targeted from the inside," Hodge replied. Just then, Officer Delgado entered, shutting the door behind her. She carried a brown folder stamped with the emblem of the Fulton County Sheriff's Department. "Sir, we've got Caldwell in an interrogation room. He's ranting about a group he's part of, calls it the True Hand, says their mission is to bring down corrupt judges." She shrugged uncomfortably. "He claims they have insiders, but he won't name names. He's asking to strike a deal." The judge's expression grew grim. "A deal? He nearly took my life." The nerve of him. Delgado laid the folder on the table, exposing Caldwell's rap sheet. "He's been in and out of the system, but these new charges are major. He's either being honest about a bigger network or lying to leverage a lesser sentence." Young felt his pulse quicken. If Caldwell did have accomplices, the situation was far from resolved. One man behind bars would not dismantle a well-organized extremist plot, especially if infiltration was at play. Judge Hodge and the officers conferred in hushed voices, forming a plan. They decided to hold Caldwell on the highest charges possible while quietly investigating his claims. They'd alert certain federal agencies and quietly coordinate without alerting the entire courthouse staff. Too many leaks could tip off the wrong people. As they parted, a newfound accord settled between Hodge and Young, forged in the crucible of near tragedy. Neither suspected how quickly that alliance would be tested. For even as they regrouped, hidden actors were already setting in motion the next phase of their plan, one that would test loyalties and blur the line between friend and foe. Late that afternoon, the courthouse had simmered back to a cautious normal, yet vigilance was high. In the hallways, rumors flew about the true hand and its alleged infiltration. The name alone carried a certain theatrical menace, conjuring images of secret oaths and clandestine power plays. Officer Delgado sat at her desk, scanning through Caldwell's background, searching for patterns, names of known associates, financial transactions, or shady social media groups. She was determined to find anything that could shed light on the group's scope. Across the building, behind the ornate doors of a seldom-used conference room, Judge Hodge sat with District Attorney Valerie Penniman, a formidable figure known for her relentless pursuit of justice. A graduate of Harvard Law School, Penniman had a storied record of taking on corrupt corporations and criminal syndicates alike, giving no quarter. She had been pressing for stiffer sentences in the racketeering case involving local politicians, an angle that many believed had triggered threats against Hodge. Clarence, Penniman began, using Hodge's first name, a sign of their long-standing friendship. This group, the True Hand, apparently believes we're part of some grand conspiracy to strip citizens of their freedoms. Hodge exhaled. Isn't it always the same tired narrative? They accuse the justice system of oppression while ignoring that we base our rulings on due process and evidence. We hold criminals accountable. Unfortunately, that paints a target on our backs. Penniman nodded, her brow furrowing. I worry about infiltration, especially with the number of new hires in courthouse security. With the city council applying budget cuts, we had to outsource some security positions to private firms. That could be a vulnerability. Just then, Hodge's phone buzzed again, a second unknown number. He tensed, suspecting another threat. However, the text read differently this time. Meet me in the cafeteria on the lower level. I have information that could save your life. Wear a disguise if possible. Come alone. It was signed with the initials JB. Puzzled, Hodge showed Penniman the text. JB, I can't think of anyone I know who goes by those initials. Penniman frowned. It could be a trap. But if there's a chance it's an insider who wants to help, maybe we should consider it carefully. I can arrange plainclothes officers to shadow the cafeteria. Hodge shook his head. No, the text specifically says to come alone. If it's someone legit, they might get spooked and vanish. He paused, deep in thought, but this is too dangerous to tackle blindly. Then at least let me know when and where, Penniman insisted. If you go alone, we can't intervene, but I'll keep an eye on the cameras. Meanwhile, Officer Young, on break in the staff lounge upstairs, was battling conflicting emotions. The tense standoff with Judge Hodge had begun the day on a sour note, yet had morphed into a rescue mission that bonded them in that dangerous moment. What perplexed him more was a small envelope he'd found in his locker. No note, just a single index card printed with that same ominous black star within a white circle. He'd shown it to Delgado, who had no clue what it signified beyond a possible extremist group's calling card. Restless, Young decided to check on Judge Hodge. Wandering through the corridors, he passed the cafeteria at the lower level and noticed Hodge, wearing a dark baseball cap pulled low, slipping quietly inside. Curious, he followed at a distance. The cafeteria was mostly deserted at this hour, just a couple of staffers on lunch break a Domino's pizza delivery guy dropping off an order for an evening meeting, and a security camera perched in the corner. Hodge, baseball cap obscuring much of his face, sat down at a table by a vending machine. A slender figure in an oversized coat approached. At first, it was impossible to distinguish any features. Then, the figure slid into a chair next to Hodge and pulled back a hood. The face revealed belonged to a woman maybe in her early 30s, sharp features, wavy hair, and eyes that darted nervously. She looked around as if every shadow contained a threat. Young grabbed a seat at a nearby table, flipping open a folder to appear inconspicuous. He strained to listen, but their voices were low and tense. Then Hodge's posture stiffened, as though the woman had said something deeply unsettling. Suddenly she stood up, rummaged in her coat pocket, and handed Hodge a flash drive. Young caught a glimpse of the woman's lips as she hissed a warning, though he couldn't discern the words. Before Hodge could respond, she rushed away, disappearing through a side exit leading to a staff-only corridor. With heart pounding, Young rose to follow, but by the time he reached the exit, the hallway was empty. She'd vanished like a phantom. When he returned to the cafeteria, Judge Hodge was still seated, eyes fixed on the small flash drive in his hand. Sensing Young's presence, Hodge looked up, expression conflicted. She called herself Jessica Banks, J.B., the judge muttered. Says she has proof that the true hand is more deeply embedded here than anyone realizes. Something about a network of officials facilitating extremist groups, funneling them money, even giving them inside intel. Young's eyes widened. That's insane. If it's true, it means we're dealing with corruption at a high level, possibly a direct threat against the entire judicial system of this county. Hodge nodded. She told me, "You're already in danger, Your Honor. This is bigger than a single gunman. You'll need these files to protect yourself and others." Then she handed me this drive and vanished. Young glanced around, making sure no one else was eavesdropping. "So what now?" he asked. Hodge pocketed the flash drive. "We see what's on here, but quietly, with complete discretion." He didn't realize that their every move was being watched. A security camera in the cafeteria pivoted slightly, capturing each gesture, each subtle exchange, in pristine detail. On another side of the courthouse, someone else watched that footage live, lips curving into a predatory smile. The next steps would launch them down a path filled with danger, conspiracies, and betrayals, none more shocking than those lurking within their own ranks. Safely behind the locked door of Judge Hodge's private chambers, Hodge inserted the flash drive into a secure laptop. Officer Young hovered nearby, scanning the room with heightened paranoia. Even the antique grandfather clock in the corner suddenly seemed ominous, its steady tick-tock reminiscent of time running out. Before opening any files, Hodge ran a basic antivirus scan. Nothing pinged. He exchanged a brief glance with Young, and then double-clicked a folder labeled Evidence. The contents were staggering, a series of documents detailing monetary transactions between various shell companies and individuals whose names popped up in local politics, law enforcement, and private security contracting. The sums were substantial, sometimes funneled through accounts at Chase Manhattan Bank or other reputable institutions. Each transaction trailed back to an untraceable offshore account. Yet the final beneficiary was listed under the code name TTH, presumably the true hand. More startling still were internal memos from what appeared to be a local lobbying firm. The memos referenced ensuring that sympathetic individuals would be placed in key security positions at courthouses, city government offices, and police precincts. Every few pages, that ominous black star within a white circle symbol reappeared, half hidden in letterheads or used as a watermark. The deeper they delved, the more sinister the network's scope became. "This is beyond infiltration," Young remarked, voice tight. It looks like a systematic plan to destabilize the justice system. Judge Hodge nodded grimly. And they have people in place, those who can manipulate security measures, sabotage evidence, or compromise investigations. Anyone working toward fair trials and lawful convictions is in their crosshairs. Then another folder caught Hodge's attention, judges' profiles. Opening it revealed detailed personal records of multiple judges across Georgia, including Hodge himself. Everything from their addresses to familial ties to rumored personal vulnerabilities. Officer Young felt a chill. "It's like a hit list," he muttered. Hodge's face hardened. He recalled the threats he'd received over the years, but seeing the meticulous data the true hand had amassed was something else entirely. He shuddered to think of how many other judges were ignorant of the fact that their personal information was compiled by extremists. They were about to close the folder when they found a sub-file named Operation Blind Gavel. Inside was a cryptic set of instructions referencing certain judges and DAs, particularly those known for unflinching stances against high-profile criminals. Step 1 talked about intimidation tactics. Step 2 mentioned the use of a sacrificial pawn to create fear and chaos, a possible reference to Caldwell's assault. Step 3 was labeled Phase Chokehold. The instructions involved leveraging infiltration to sabotage court cases, arrange false evidence, and orchestrate direct attacks if intimidation failed. "These are battle plans," Officer Young said, voice trembling with anger. "They're not just passively watching. They're waging war on the justice system." Hodge closed his laptop and rubbed his temples. "It seems Jessica Banks risked a lot to get us this data. If the true hand realizes she leaked it, she'll be in grave danger." Young glanced nervously at the locked door. "And we might be next. We have to do something. We should contact the FBI, the Department of Justice, someone at a higher level." Yet the judge hesitated. "Yes, but carefully. If the infiltration is as widespread as these documents suggest, we can't be sure who to trust locally. Even some federal agencies might have compromised agents. We need proof that is undeniable proof that can force a larger public reckoning." At that moment, a polite knock echoed against the chamber door. Both men froze. The knock came again, more insistent. Young carefully unholstered his sidearm, nodding for Hodge to open the door. When the judge did, standing there was none other than District Attorney Penniman, her face etched with urgency. "I've been looking everywhere for you," she said, breathless. "The courthouse just got another bomb threat, specifically mentioning you, Clarence." Hodge's stomach clenched. "Another threat? That's the second one today, not counting the hostage crisis. We found more than just a single lunatic with a gun, Valerie." Penniman stepped inside, eyes darting to the laptop. She caught a glimpse of a folder with that black star and white circle symbol. "What is all this?" Hodge explained everything. Jessica Banks, the flash drive, the infiltration. Penniman's expression morphed from shock to white-hot anger. "We need to get out in front of this. If we let them keep the upper hand, more attacks will come." Officer Young cleared his throat. "Penniman, this is bigger than we thought. We can't just pass it up the chain without verifying who's clean." "The infiltration might go high." Penniman nodded. "Agreed. We need a plan. Let's finalize it quickly, because the building may be about to go into a bomb threat lockdown." As if on cue, the courthouse intercom crackled to life. "Security alert. All personnel proceed to designated lockdown zones." This is not a drill, the message repeated, accompanied by flashing lights in the corridor. A tense silence settled among the three. Now that the true hand knew Hodge had survived the earlier hostage attempt, and now likely suspected their infiltration had been exposed, it was only a matter of time before they escalated their tactics. None of them yet comprehended how cunning or how brutal that escalation would become. But one thing was certain: the intangible line between safety and chaos had been crossed. From this point on, every move had to be swift, silent, and calculated. The true hand was tightening its grip, and the next blow could land anywhere, on anyone. An ominous hush fell over the courthouse as flashing lights signaled a complete lockdown. Metal shutters began descending at certain external doors, while staff and visitors huddled behind locked doors in designated safe areas. Over the intercom, a calm but firm voice directed everyone to remain still until the threat was cleared. Judge Hodge, Penniman, and Officer Young found themselves in a narrow hallway leading from Hodge's chambers to a security checkpoint. They moved quickly and quietly, the tension evident in their hurried steps. The plan was simple: get to the basement-level security hub, where they could monitor the entire building's cameras and coordinate with any unaffected law enforcement agencies. As they approached an elevator, Penniman used her access badge to call it. The digital display blinked, showing the lift climbing slowly from the basement. Then it stopped abruptly on the first floor. "Someone else is using it," Young whispered, raising his sidearm cautiously. He and Penniman exchanged wary glances. Anyone could be on the other side of those elevator doors. When the elevator finally arrived with a muted ding, the doors slid open to reveal a trio of frightened courthouse staffers wearing ID badges from the district clerk's office. Their faces paled at the sight of guns raised. Officer Young quickly holstered his weapon, though he kept a watchful gaze. "What are you doing out here?" Hodge asked, stepping inside. "You should be in lockdown areas." One of the clerks, a bespectacled man with a trembling voice, replied, "We were finishing up an urgent filing when the alarm sounded. Our supervisor directed us to the basement safe room, but the elevator took forever." Penniman nodded, pressing the button for the basement. "You can come with us, but stay close." As the elevator descended, a claustrophobic tension settled inside the small space. The hum of the machinery was overshadowed by everyone's collective fear that at any moment something catastrophic could happen. Halfway down, the lights flickered once, twice. Then the elevator juddered to a halt between floors. Darkness enveloped them, broken only by an emergency overhead lamp that cast erratic shadows across anxious faces. A surge of adrenaline shot through them all. Penniman pressed the buttons, but none responded. The overhead speaker in the elevator crackled. A voice, distorted by static, hissed, "Blind gavel is in motion." Then the line went dead. Young pounded on the door. "We're stuck," he told them, frustration creeping into his voice. Might be a short in the system or sabotage. In the dim glow, Judge Hodge caught Penniman's eye. They both knew "blind gavel" was the code phrase from the True Hands files. If the group had taken control of the courthouse's electrical system, even partially, they had far more power than any of them anticipated. One of the clerks whimpered, "We're going to suffocate in here." Another clutched a small bottle of Coca-Cola, sipping it nervously. "Calm down," Penniman said, voice steady with practiced authority. "We're not going to suffocate. We'll just have to pry these doors open and see if we can climb out." Officer Young and Judge Hodge wedged themselves at the crack between the elevator doors, straining to force them apart. Inch by inch, the metal panels scraped open, revealing a concrete wall and a sliver of the floor just below. They were stuck slightly above the basement level. A few more inches opened, allowing enough space for someone to squeeze through. Suddenly, the elevator lights snapped back on. With an abrupt jolt, the elevator lurched downward another few feet, slamming to a stop. This time, the lower half of the doorway aligned with the basement corridor. Hodge looked down and realized they could scramble out if they carefully maneuvered. One by one, they slid through the gap. Officer Young jumped down first, scanning the hallway with his weapon drawn. The corridor lights flickered. Emergency sirens pulsed faintly in the distance. The rest followed, landing onto the polished concrete floor. They made their way to the security hub, hearts pounding. Penniman swiped her card, but the door's electronic reader refused to budge. The entire system seemed compromised. Anger flared across her face. So they've locked us out of the main security station. That means they're controlling building operations from somewhere else. Just then, a new voice emerged from behind them. They turned to find two courthouse security officers. Approaching one was Kim Delgado, Officer Young's partner. The other was a tall, broad-shouldered man named Wesley Hearns, wearing the insignia of a newly contracted private security outfit. They both had sweat on their brows, as if they'd been running. "We saw the cameras go offline," Delgado said, out of breath. "Heard the elevator jam. Are you all okay?" Penniman explained the sabotage, the infiltration. She avoided giving explicit details, but emphasized that they needed to retake the security hub and restore control. Hearns, expression unreadable, nodded. "We can try the back entrance. There's an emergency override switch if we can access it. Follow me." Young spared Delgado a brief look of relief. Seeing her was a welcome sight. Yet as they moved, he kept noticing Hearns's calm demeanor. It was either seasoned professionalism or something else altogether. They traversed a maze of corridors until they reached a solid metal door labeled Security Operations Restricted. Hearns pointed to a side panel. "We can use a manual override here," he said, rummaging in his belt for a tool. But before he could open the panel, a gunshot echoed from somewhere down the corridor. Everyone ducked instinctively. Shouts reverberated through the basement's concrete walls. Then an ear-splitting explosion shook the foundation, causing dust and debris to rain down. The building rumbled like a wounded beast. All eyes turned in the direction of the blast. The true hand had made its next move, and it was a violent one. If the group had placed bombs, no corner of the courthouse was truly safe. Hearns's hands trembled only slightly as he pressed the tool to the panel. The beep of the override switch, seemingly trivial compared to the chaos unfolding. But whether they'd retake control of the security hub or be trapped in a final stand remained an open question, one that might be answered by the next hail of gunfire or the next explosion. Time felt elastic in the disorienting haze after the explosion. Each pulse in Judge Hodges' temples seemed louder than the echoing detonation. Alarms blared throughout the basement halls, an unrelenting chorus of klaxons and emergency strobes. Overhead, dust swirled in the flickering red lights, giving the corridor an almost hellish glow. Hearns managed to trip the override switch on the security door. With a heavy clang, the lock disengaged, allowing them into the hub. Once inside, they found a darkened room lit only by a row of emergency monitors. Much of the mainframe was offline, but a few screens flickered with live feeds from scattered corners of the courthouse. "Let's see what we're dealing with," Penniman said, stepping forward. Her reflection ghosted across the fractured screens, making her look like a warrior in a broken mirror. They quickly identified the epicenter of the explosion, a supply closet near the building's mechanical systems. Flames licked at the edges of the frame, and the corridor was thick with smoke. Water from activated sprinklers rained down, turning the floor into a slick, reflective sheet. Officer Delgado frowned. "It looks like they targeted the building's water and electrical lines. Maybe the idea is to cripple us completely." Meanwhile, Hearns took a seat at a console, fingers dancing over the keyboard. "I have partial access," he muttered. "There's a sub-level network node I might be able to reboot. That could restore power to the cameras and intercom if the lines aren't too damaged." Judge Hodge peered at one of the surviving camera feeds. He saw squads of frightened civilians being shepherded out of certain wings by local law enforcement. The tension etched on their faces mirrored his own swirling emotions. At any moment, a second bomb could go off, or the True Hand's accomplices might strike again. Suddenly, a beep alerted them to a message appearing on one monitor. In stark white text on a black background, it read, "All judges must fall. Blind gavel has begun." That black star within a white circle symbol blazed beneath the words. Penniman's jaw tightened. They've hijacked the internal system to broadcast their threats. Officer Young pressed his hand over the screen, as if wanting to physically block the message. "We can't let them turn this building into a war zone. We have to regain full control, or we risk more violence." Hearns looked up from the console. "I'll head down to the sub-level. There's a hardware reset panel. Once I flip it, we should be able to route power to the backup servers. We can lock them out. But I'll need at least one person to come with me for cover." Penniman and Hodge exchanged glances. Officer Delgado volunteered, but Young shook his head. "I'll go. Delgado, stay here with the judge and de Penniman. You know the system better than I do. If something goes wrong, you'll have a better shot at fixing it on this end." Delgado hesitated, then relented. "All right, but be careful, Frank." The slip into using his first name was a poignant reminder of how personal this fight had become. Hearns grabbed a flashlight, and both men stepped into the corridor. The air was thick with the smell of char and damp drywall. They navigated rubble-strewn passages, occasionally hearing distant shouts or the crackling of flames. Overhead, the sprinklers continued to rain down, creating a surreal world of drifting smoke and water droplets that reflected the emergency lights in shimmering arcs. As they neared the sub-level stairs, Hearns suddenly gripped Young's shoulder, pulling him back. A faint scratching sound echoed from around a corner. Young crouched, sidearm raised. Hearns mirrored him, the flashlight beam dancing across crumbled plaster. They waited, hearts pounding, until a rat scampered across the floor, scurrying away from the chaos. In hushed tension they pressed on. At last, they found a rusted metal door labeled Electrical Network Substation. Hearns jabbed at the door with his shoulder, forcing it open. The space inside was a labyrinth of circuit breakers, server stacks, and conduit pipes. "All right," Hearns whispered. "I need about 5 minutes to reboot the hardware and reroute the power. Cover me." Young nodded, scanning the area. He spotted an old metal scaffold that looked like a vantage point. Clambering up, he took position with a clear line of sight. As Hearns worked, the hum of servers slowly awakening to life filled the room with an eerie undertone. The flickering lights overhead stabilized slightly. Minutes ticked by with agonizing slowness. Young's muscles tensed, ready for an ambush. This sub-level felt like the perfect place for the True Hand to launch a final attack. Suddenly, a metallic clang reverberated through the dimly lit corridor outside the substation. Young aimed his flashlight at the open doorway, breath catching. A figure stepped into the beam. It was Jessica Banks, JB, her face smudged with soot. Her eyes darted frantically, as if she'd been running for her life. Upon seeing Officer Young, she put a finger to her lips, silently pleading for caution. Then she motioned behind her. Young tensed. If the True Hand was pursuing her, they could be moments away. He waved her inside. She stumbled forward, breathing raggedly. "They found out," she whispered. "The files I gave Judge Hodge. They know. They're hunting me. There's a group of them armed with automatic rifles somewhere in the lower levels." A chill traced Young's spine. He glanced down at Hearns, who was still furiously typing commands into the system console. The clock was ticking. If armed assailants arrived now, they'd be trapped in a lethal crossfire. Sweat beaded on Young's brow. "Get behind some cover," he told Jessica, gesturing toward an industrial cabinet. Then he focused on the corridor beyond, ears pricked for the first sound of approaching footsteps. The building groaned from structural damage, and overhead lights flickered again. In the renewed half-dark, the tension was suffocating. Jessica's face revealed sheer terror. She had risked her life to blow this conspiracy wide open. Now, the true hand was determined to erase her. Young felt a surge of protective resolve. In that heartbeat, he realized they were teetering on the brink. Every second counted, and the cost of failure could be the lives of everyone in the courthouse. In the substation's oppressive gloom, Officer Young's senses were on overdrive. The swirl of tension only thickened when a new sound emerged: footsteps, slow and measured, accompanied by hushed voices. Jessica Banks pressed herself against the wall, her trembling breath audible in the quiet. Hearns kept working, face set in determined concentration, entirely reliant on Young's protection. The corridor outside glowed sporadically from emergency lights, creating a strobe effect. Shapes danced in the half-light, but the intruders remained elusive. Then a flicker of movement. A silhouette with a rifle at the ready. Young's gut clenched. A second silhouette emerged, possibly more. They approached the substation door, stepping gingerly through debris. Young readied his weapon. He could hear the men muttering under their breath, discussing the sabotage they'd already wrought. One of them, his voice tight and cruel, spoke in a low rasp. "They won't stop the plan. Another bomb is set near the east wing. We just have to ensure no one regains control down here." Young's eyes locked on Hearns, who needed mere seconds more. The console's lights glowed, and Hearns tapped a final sequence of keys with a triumphant hiss. "I've got it. The system should be operational. Delgado can re-establish control from the hub, but the movement, no matter how subdued, alerted the intruders. They whipped around, aiming into the substation. Muzzle flashes lit the corridor as bullets ricocheted off metal rails and concrete walls. Young returned fire, but the men ducked for cover, unleashing a hail of rounds that forced him back. Sparks flew from a conduit pipe, and darkness consumed them again as the overhead emergency light shattered. Hearns, pinned behind the console, looked frantically for an escape. Jessica clutched the hem of her coat, face pale. "Everyone, get down!" Young barked. He fired carefully, short bursts, to keep the intruders back. The muzzle flashes illuminated fleeting glimpses, 2 masked men, possibly a third deeper in the corridor. They were well armed and well coordinated. Outside, footsteps scurried, and the third figure, a woman's voice, shouted, "Cover me! I'm throwing a flash!" Within moments, a flashbang device clanked into the substation, rolling ominously across the floor. Young's stomach lurched. "Flash out!" he warned. He dove behind the metal scaffold, pressing his face into the crook of his elbow. The device erupted in an eruption of light and concussive force. Even with partial cover, the blast reverberated through his skull, disorienting him. By the time he scrambled to his feet, the intruders were charging in, rifles raised. Jessica stifled a scream. Hearns gritted his teeth and tried to wedge himself deeper behind the console. However, in that moment of chaos, the console lights flickered to full brightness. A crackling radio near the system beeped. Officer Delgado's voice burst through. "We have partial control. We're locking down the sub-level doors. Hang in there." As if on cue, mechanical groans echoed in the corridor outside. Heavy metal bulkheads slid into place, sealing off adjacent passages. The masked intruders realized they were about to be trapped. One of them cursed loudly, spinning back to the corridor. Their path was blocked, but they might still fight their way out through the substation. Young saw a fleeting chance. While the intruders were momentarily distracted by the descending bulkheads, he surged forward. Firing in controlled arcs, he managed to strike one masked figure in the shoulder, sending him reeling with a cry of pain. Another world, bullets tearing across a server stack in a shower of sparks. A chaotic dance of life and death unfurled in those cramped quarters. Hearns, valiantly yanking open a side cabinet, found a small, outdated shotgun, presumably for substation security. With trembling hands, he aimed at the door. Jessica crawled behind a steel workstation, heart hammering. The lead intruder advanced on Young, rifle muzzle flashing. Young dodged behind a thick pipe, wincing as rounds chipped concrete mere inches from his head. Summoning courage, he lunged, slamming the intruder's rifle aside. They grappled in the strobing half-light, the fight primal and brutal. At last, a thunderous shotgun blast cut through the commotion. Hearns had fired, striking the second intruder who was about to flank Young. The recoil nearly knocked Hearns off his feet, but the intruder collapsed, weapon clattering away. The third assailant, cornered and outnumbered, raised her rifle in desperation. Young fired 2 shots center mass, and she went down with a ragged gasp. Then silence, except for their ragged breathing and the hiss of sparking wires. Hearns lowered the shotgun with shaking arms. Young stepped over the intruders, confirming they were disarmed. One still breathed, clutching a bullet wound, but none posed an immediate threat. Jessica crawled out from behind the workstation, tears brimming in relief. Hearns exhaled shakily. We did it. We actually did it. But Young's mind was already racing. If a bomb was set near the East Wing, hundreds more people could be in peril. They needed to warn Delgado, Penniman, and Hodge immediately. The radio crackled again. Delgado's voice: "Basement infiltration teams are in custody or neutralized, but we've got a tip from the bomb squad. We think there's an active device on the east side, near a structural load-bearing area. If it goes off, that entire section might collapse." Young took a moment to gather himself. "We have to defuse it, and we might only have minutes." Jessica, still trembling, held up a keycard one of the intruders had dropped. They mentioned an access panel. "If we can get to the mechanical shafts in the East Wing, maybe we can reach the bomb. We have to stop it before it kills everyone in that section." Hearns gazed at the unconscious intruders, then the battered substation. "Let's go, officer. We need to move fast." In the distance, the alarms wailed like a chorus of doomsday sirens. The True Hands plan was in motion, and time was slipping away with each shrieking klaxon. As Officer Young, Jessica Banks, and Wesley Hearns sprinted through the basement corridors, each second felt like an eternity. Over their radios, Delgado shouted updates about the bomb's location. "We believe it's in a storage area adjacent to the East Wing mechanical room, 2nd floor." The group reached a service stairwell leading upward, where smoke from the earlier explosion still lingered in the air. Coughing, they raced up the steps, adrenaline drowning out fatigue. Judge Hodge, District Attorney Penniman, and Officer Delgado were in the security hub, monitoring the camera feeds that were gradually coming back online. Delgado's voice buzzed through the radio. "You're nearly there, Officer Young. The door to your left leads to a maintenance corridor. The device should be close by." Young threw open the heavy metal door, stepping into a dimly lit passage lined with steam pipes and electrical conduits. The walls resonated with the building's heartbeat, humming machinery and dripping water. Jessica clutched the keycard she'd taken from the subdued intruder, scanning it at a locked door near the corridor's end. A faint green light flickered, then beeped. The lock clicked. They pushed inside. The chamber was cluttered with crates, tools, and cleaning supplies. A single fluorescent light flickered overhead, revealing a crude device strapped to a structural column, the bomb. Blocks of C4 were taped around a digital timer, wires coiled like serpents. Glowing red digits counted down relentlessly: 03, 15, 03, 14, 03, 13. Jessica's breath quickened. I'm not a bomb tech," she stammered, eyes darting over the nest of wires. Hearns, scanning the floor for any helpful gear, spotted a battered toolkit. "Neither am I," Hearns muttered, rummaging in the kit. His knowledge of explosives was minimal, just the basics from brief security training. Officer Young stepped forward cautiously. We can't wait for the bomb squad. They might not get here in time. On the radio, Delgado's anxious voice. We're trying to route a bomb tech your way, but we're short-staffed. You've got under 3 minutes, do what you can. Jessica inhaled, steadying her trembling hands. Let me help. I have some background in electronics. Not bomb disposal, but I can read wiring diagrams. Maybe there's a clue. Her eyes scanned the circuit board near the timer. The design looked homegrown, an improvised patchwork of triggers. We can't just yank wires blindly. We need a plan. Young's eyes flicked to the digital countdown 02, 32. Talk to me, Jess. What are we cutting or bypassing? She pointed to a cluster of wires, branching off to what looked like an accelerometer. If it's tamper-resistant, it might blow if we jostle it the wrong way. We have to disable that sensor first. Hearns carefully opened the kit. Inside were wire cutters, a small soldering iron, and insulating tape. Jessica gestured for the wire cutters, her voice quivering, the purple wire with the green stripe. If I'm reading this right, that's the link to the accelerometer. We cut it or short it, then isolate it. Carefully, Jessica guided the cutters, exhaling a shaky breath. She snipped the wire. No explosion. She let out a trembling sigh of relief. The timer kept ticking, now at 01:58. Hearns pointed to a small battery cell clipped onto the side. That might be a backup power supply. Even if we cut the main wires, the timer could keep ticking. Officer Young nodded, stepping in to hold a flashlight. Jessica gently pried away a thin metal shield, revealing a backup battery. She rummaged for insulating tape, detaching the battery connector with surgical precision. Sparks flickered, but the timer still glowed. 01:27. They realized the main circuit still had power. Jessica spotted a larger battery pack near the primary block of C4. We have to kill the main feed. It's the only way. Officer Young unfastened a clamp around the device, hoping to expose the terminal. The timer clicked to 01:10. We're running out of time, Jess. With sweat beading on her brow, Jessica used the wire cutters again. They cut the red wire, not the bright red, the darker one, leading to the main battery. Then the black ground. That should kill the circuit, but do it in the correct sequence, or it might trigger the blasting cap. The tension was palpable. Officer Young inhaled, steeling himself. He snipped the dark red wire first. The timer flickered to 00:43. He then snipped the black ground wire, simultaneously holding the battery in place to avoid shifting any other connections. For an agonizing moment, nothing happened. Then the timer's numbers vanished, replaced by a dark, lifeless display. They froze, waiting for a final beep or flash, but none came. The bomb's threat dissolved in the hush of the flickering fluorescent light. After a few heartbeats, they exhaled in collective relief. Jessica almost collapsed with the weight of tension leaving her body. Over the radio, Delgado's jubilant cry rang out. "We show the device's signals are offline." "Did you guys do it?" Young keyed his mic. "Yes, we disarmed it." His voice trembled with relief. "We're safe for now." A wave of cheering echoed through the radio. The tension that had weighed on them all day began to loosen its stranglehold. Hearns gently peeled away from the device, letting the bomb squad handle the rest. In that moment, Officer Young felt a surge of profound gratitude for Jessica's bravery, for Hearns's steady resolve, for Delgado's unwavering support, and for a second chance to rectify the earlier animosity with Judge Hodge. And yet, he knew the threat of the True Hand wasn't fully extinguished. Their infiltration and extremist agenda still cast a menacing shadow over the city. But for now, in the battered corridors of the courthouse, that malevolent plan had been thwarted. The giant clock of potential destruction had been stopped at mere seconds, an unthinkable salvation that left them breathless, hearts still pounding with the memory of what almost was. The events that day shook the entire city to its core, forever altering the paths of Officer Young and Judge Hodge. Their tentative respect deepened into a bond forged in crisis, each acknowledging they had much to learn from the other. In the weeks that followed, federal agencies descended on Atlanta, unearthing the true hand's wide-reaching conspiracy, exposing corrupt officials and dismantling secret networks. Jessica Banks testified in high-profile hearings, sparking a renewed commitment to vigilance in the justice system. And when karmic retribution finally rained down on every conspirator, be it in the form of lengthy prison sentences or public disgrace, it felt both just and satisfying. Thank you for joining us on this unforgettable journey. If you found this story thrilling and suspenseful, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. We appreciate every single one of you who engages with our content, and your support allows us to continue sharing more dramatic, captivating tales. So stay tuned, there's always another riveting story just around the corner. Until next time, take care and keep your eyes open to the unexpected twists life may bring.